Hello, this is a tips and tricks video. You may recognize some of these tips from a previous video, and that's good because repetition breeds success. Tip 1. Diversify your items. I'm not saying you have to build different items every game. What I'm saying is that you should try and actively spread your damage or damage mitigation across many different item types. What does that mean? Generally, when you're playing TFT, you have to fight multiple different compositions. And while you might be tempted to build 3 of the same item, like, 3 Thorn Mails or 3 of whatever the heck, Dragon's Claw or whatever it is, 3 Warmogs, right? You might be tempted to do something like that, but it's actually ineffective for like a ton of reasons. Instead of thinking about the armor or the HP or the resistances, you should kind of think about the effective HP that you get. I'm not going to explain it in detail, right? But because they're like equations and stuff, and that stuff isn't really fun, right? Instead, I'm just going to tell you the general rule. Basically, HP plus the resistance is better than just HP or just resistance. I'll show you guys the math anyway. You can look at it, right? But I don't look at it. I just understand the general rule. The same thing applies to damage too. It's usually better to have attack damage and attack speed than just have one or the other. Same thing with mana, regen, and AP damage rather than just one or the other, generally speaking. There are always like situations like, well, not on this champion, not on this situation, but for the most part, it's what you want to do. Here's another tip, and instead of just face rolling into your favorite comp, expand your item a bit. By playing many different comps and items, you can slowly learn, I guess, how to beat the comp that you're fighting, what they're kind of weak against, and you can understand why people do what they do. It'll help you play against it properly, and it'll help you learn how to hurt them during their power spikes. It even helps you force that one comp that you love so much, because it lets you know when it's time to force your comp and when it's time to, try out that secondary that you've been building up. Tip 3. You should know how many units exist. For many early comps, you should never be afraid to go the same build as one or the other 2 guys, especially if it's a strong type of team. If there are enough units, especially of 1 and 2 and sometimes even 3 costs, for you to go, especially if you have no plans on 3-starring the units. There's actually a method to kind of make sure that you're more likely to get the units than they are. Not only can you roll at the specific levels that you need to, but you can even forego, like I said, trying to 3-star, and instead playing for trying to level past and pick up the units that they can't stop to pick up. Another tip, and this probably doesn't need to be told to you guys, but you should probably opt for watching videos like these. Videos on YouTube, videos that you can pause, rewind, fast forward, pause. I said pause already, but look at it and analyze the situation. Because it's easier to learn when you can learn at your own pace. Having to go at the whims of the stream, well, it can be fun, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't watch streams. You should watch streams. Watch my stream. I'm saying that it's easier for you to learn when you can more so control the environment, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. Here's something else I want to cover. It's kind of the same tip as a little earlier, but it also applies not just to items, right? It also applies to teams as a whole. Teams that are more very generally function well. You want teams that have good damage, right? Good frontline. You want teams that have good damage, good frontline, and good utility. Utility can be a lot of things. It's basically damage or damage mitigation that isn't necessarily direct, right? For example, a stun keeps your team from getting hit, doesn't it? Keeps people from it keeps the other guys from casting. So what does that do for you? That actually increases the health of your team overall, but it can't really be measured in the same way. So we call those utility. Sometimes things like shield and buffs count too. So you kind of want to make sure that you have a good amount of stuns, healings, and other things that aren't just damage and flat tankiness. And you can get them from any freaking source, right? It's not just items. Your traits and the unit types themselves also can contribute to the overall value of your team. Oh, while I'm still covering tips, right? I want you to prioritize the front over the back in most cases. Because of the nature of the game, the way it works is that this is going to be a hard one to explain. So a backline unit can destroy a frontline unit faster than a frontline unit can destroy a frontline unit. What happens is that when your team has no more frontline unit left, right, it just falls apart instantly. So generally you want to make sure that you have a stronger front line first. I'm not saying you should itemize your backline because you should, right? But you should want to have a few strong frontline units, or even one strong frontline unit with really good items, to make sure that they can hold while your backline tries to eradicate their frontline first. Another tip is that you want to try and use your items. I'm not saying, obviously we all understand there are optimal item sets, and you should go for your optimal items when you can. But winning rounds is really important for most cases. You want to use your items because it'll help you win rounds. Even if you don't end up with optimal items, you will end up with maybe a little more HP and you can outlast somebody else. HP is such a wonderful, massive resource. You can use it to choose when you're okay with losing HP. Somebody with 80 HP has a lot more rounds that they can either get unlucky on or make mistakes on than someone with 13 HP. So it's really important to try and win rounds by using your items. A lot of times I'll see people with 4 components on their bench, 5 components on their bench. You don't want to be that guy, because if you're holding all 4 of your items for, I don't know, Seraphine or something, right? Or a 4 cost unit, more accurately, so that applies to every set. If you're holding it all for a 4 cost unit, and I'm just okay with putting it on a 1 cost unit and trading it later, then I'll win these early rounds and I'll still be able to win those later rounds. You guys want to have item holders. I know that last tip covered like a whole bunch of things, and there's so much more to talk about. But before I ramble on too long, because the game is so complex, I'm just going to go ahead and say thanks for watching, and we'll cover some more stuff later.